Hi there, I'm Jake Ward, in for Gadi, Schwartz. A multi-state manhunt is underway right now for a man suspected of killing 18 people in Maine and leaving 13 others injured. The city of Lewiston, where the shooting happened, remains locked down tonight, as well as several nearby communities. Police say 40-year-old Robert Card opened fire at two different locations yesterday evening. They consider him armed and dangerous, and they are advising people not to approach him under any circumstances. Many schools and businesses are closed in the area following advice from authorities for folks to stay home or shelter in place. So let's go through how it all played out last night. Police say Card first entered a crowded bowling alley and opened fire there. This was around 6:56 p.m. local. 7 people were found dead there. He then went to a local bar and grill just a few miles away and opened fire again around 7:08 p.m. 8 people were found dead at that location, and 3 others died subsequently at the hospital. One of them was Joey Walker, whose father says he tried to stop the gunman before he was killed. NBC's Lester Holt spoke to Walker's father earlier today.
He picked up a butcher knife from somewhere, he has all that stuff near the bar anyways, and he tried to go at the gunman to stop him from shooting anybody else. The gunman shot him twice through this.
Does it change your pain at all?
Oh.
Knowing that?
It made it worse. Yeah, it made it worse.
Police have not released the names of the other victims yet, and residents in Lewiston and nearby communities have been asked to stay put until Robert Card is found. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Sam Brock, who is in Bowdoin, Maine tonight. Sam, talk to us about the manhunt. Do we know, is there any sign of where this man might be?
Sure. So Robert Card, Jake, is from Bowdoin. Where I am right now, this is his family house down the street here. I actually can only get this far. Police, I'm told from folks we had on the ground here when this all started about 30 or 40 minutes ago, pushed everybody back. It is darkness. Under normal circumstances with 30 or 40, 50 reporters out here, you would see lights everywhere. They've told us not to use lights, so it may be hard to see me. Overhead, you can also hear a helicopter going around right now, and there have been multiple drones in the air. All of this might lead you to think that the end of this manhunt could be near, that something is really happening, there's movement right now. I would pump the brakes on that immediately based on what Maine State Police just tweeted out or put on X, which is namely that this family home over my shoulder has a couple of different parts to it, and they say it is standard practice to go through and execute search warrants. That is what they are doing right now. According to the police, they are executing a search warrant without knowing in this tweeter, in this post, whether or not Robert Card is actually inside the home. Now, our folks here also, Jake, did hear police say, come out with your hands up. That has spawned reports that there was a confrontation going on and they were trying to get Card to come out of the home. Police also said that is standard practice before executing any search warrant to do that. Doesn't mean he's in the house, doesn't mean he's not in the house. But obviously with the amount of just sheer presence of law enforcement and media here right now, one would make assumptions. I will say when I walked up here, and we're probably a good, again, I don't know, half a mile at least from the family home. There was 6, 7, 8 police cars on the street. Then there's a physical barricade with other officers over my shoulder, which you probably can't see from here. And then all the way up this hill, that's where the family house is. Jake, I was also here about 10 hours ago talking to a neighbor. Hundreds of acres where I'm standing right now all belong to the Card family. They own a ton of land here. And what this gentleman told me, who was childhood neighbors with Robert Card, is that there is an assumption that because his father's name was on this house, people were assuming he was there, that there potentially could be movements over there at the specific property, which isn't even where he lives. So there's been a lot of confusion. But right now, one thing is for certain, there is a very, very heavy police presence here. We just don't know why, and we're waiting for answers.
So, Sam, just to be absolutely clear for people watching, obviously you are being as careful as you can. There is a real sense of urgency around this scene, but as far as we can tell, this is just police going through the standard choreography of going to an address associated with the man. It does not mean that he is there or that there is a confrontation underway right now.
That's a very good characterization. They've said that this is doing their due diligence. Literally, those were the words that Maine State Police used in the post. It doesn't mean that Robert Card isn't in there. It just means that they are saying, do not draw assumptions based on the fact that you have all of these people out here. And as you can probably hear, Jake, the sounds of the helicopter above. I will tell you, in a day and a half on this so far, I have not seen this level of presence. Certainly not this much activity from above and on the ground. But again, it doesn't mean anything yet. We are waiting for police to make some sort of address.
Thank you for that clarity, Sam. So reacquaint us with who Robert Card is. What have you been hearing from residents there about who he is, and what do authorities know about him so far?
Yeah, there are quite a few revelations on that front today. Card is a 40-year-old who has spent a couple of decades, according to both police sources and people that I've spoken with in armed services, as an Army reservist. He's someone who is proficient in weapons. In fact, we spoke with someone who is a former Army reservist, not in the same unit as Card, but had actually been trained by him on an M16 rifle. And what he told us was that it is scary how good Robert Card is with weapons. He said, you know, he understands the tactical sides of things. He understands warfare. I mean, this really made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, Jake, to hear a description like that based on someone that we know authorities is hunting for right now. So we know that. We also know that his sister-in-law and some members of the family had come out and confirmed that he had trouble with what he said were voices in his head. They were deeply concerned about his mental state and had reported it to the military and also to the police. And in fact, over the course of the summer, several sources tell NBC News that it is true he was intervened by police and taken to a mental care facility for a couple of weeks in July. This is the same person who was in possession, apparently, of a semi-automatic weapon. And I did ask that question to police today. How could it be that after this individual voiced all of these concerns about his own mental stability, he still can have a weapon? And no one could seem to answer that question, although there are no red flag laws in Maine. I know that's getting talked about considerably. There's yellow flag laws, but no red flag laws, which means that you would need someone to deem him mentally unstable to take away the weapon. And it's just one of those things right now where perhaps many people are second-guessing how this could be. But the reality is someone who is self-avowed at this point to have issues with mental health was armed, and police believe is responsible for all of these murders.
A trained warrior, obviously so troubled, he went to authorities looking for help and is now on the loose and heavily armed. Sam, you've obviously been there for a day or so now. Give us some sense of the place. I understand Bowdoin is a very small town, just a few thousand people. Give us some sense of where Robert Card is from and what the community's response is to this at this hour.
Sure. So to your first question, Bowdoin is like 3,200 people. Lewiston, I believe, is the second largest city in Maine, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 38,000. But if you're looking collectively, Jake, at Auburn, Lewiston, Bowdoin, it's really more like 50, 60,000 people. We're not talking about a huge population or geographic area. But the reality is right now, he may not necessarily be in this state. No one could answer the question whether he's here, whether he's still alive. We know that other states have not issued shelters in place like what we've seen here, but they are certainly remaining vigilant, and resources are pouring in right now from New York and from Boston, FBI field offices all throughout the area, state, federal, local, hundreds of people on the ground right now trying to find this man. But as far as the community reaction is concerned, several times today, I spoke with people who said, you know, he's a good guy. And I don't know what happened. I saw a mom with her son in a convenience store, like the only store that was open in this entire town. And she said, you know, you could see the pain in her face. He was a good guy. I don't know. I don't want to talk to you right now, but I don't know how this could have gone so south. And I've heard that from quite a few people.
At this hour, a troubled man on the loose in a small community. Sam Brock, thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for the clarity around the obviously urgent scene behind you, but one that does not bring a clear end to this manhunt. Sam Brock, thank you so much. Now, Maine has a low homicide rate, and this event is its worst mass shooting ever. But this is not even its first mass shooting this year. And while police say Robert Card purchased his weaponry lawfully, NBC News correspondent Noah Pransky takes a closer look at how Maine's gun laws compare to the rest of the country.
Jake, it's been a really tough year in Maine. We have two separate mass shootings now, only separated by about 30 minutes from each other. April in Bowdoin, this week in Lewiston, two terrible events. And those two mass shootings, more than the last 5 years in the entire state of Maine combined. That's despite, frankly, a fairly high number of households in Maine with guns, about half of them, according to the Rands Corporation. That's the 16th most in the entire U.S. The place we do see some correlation, though, for gun ownership is total gun death rates. So the darker the color, the higher the death rate. And we see that states that have more guns tend to have more deaths from guns. That's homicide, suicide, and accidental deaths all in one picture. So Maine, the rate here is 12.6 for every 100 1,000. Middle of the pack. High for the Northeast, but middle of the pack for the entire U.S. And the other place that Maine is middle of the pack is on its gun laws. So Every Town for Gun Safety, which advocates for tougher gun laws, ranks Maine 25th in the entire country. They do have some laws on the books that relate gun ownership and mental health, but there's a lot that they have not passed in Maine. And also, like, really leaning into the libertarian leanings here, there is no permit required in Maine to purchase a weapon. There is no permit required to carry a weapon. In fact, Maine allows open carry. And Maine does not have any additional state background checks in addition to what the feds have, whereas a lot of other states have instituted additional background checks. Giffords Law Center, which also advocates for more gun laws, gives Maine an F ranking. They say there's a lot of room for improvement on these areas as well as some others. Maine, one of only 2 states in all of the Northeast that got an F for Gifford. They see improvement is necessary. Jake?
Noah Pransky with the lax gun laws in Maine. Noah, thank you so much. It has now been more than 24 hours since this manhunt began, and there are still no clear signs of the suspect, although, of course, the activity we've been following this hour gives us some sense of where it might go. But to give you an idea of the layout of the search area, Card's vehicle was found in Lewiston, Maine. That's less than 10 miles from the 2 shooting locations. Maine's most populous city, Portland, is just down the road along with an interstate. This is, of course, very important because it takes you to neighboring Massachusetts and New Hampshire. NBC senior law enforcement analyst and former Illinois Police Chief Cedric Alexander joins me now to talk about the effort to find Robert Card and how the geography of where they are looking may have affected it. Chief, given where Card's vehicle was found within easy reach of both an interstate and the coastline, I mean, at this hour, how far away could he be just 24 hours after the shooting?
Well, you know, that is very difficult to tell. And I think at this point, the fact is that truly is his vehicle that was left behind. What was the urgency of him leaving the vehicle there? Was that intentional? Did he get into a second vehicle? Did he get assistance or help from someone? Did he hijack a vehicle from someone? And yet we don't know about. There are a number of variables in which we are still yet to determine. But within the parameters of those 3 communities in which you just spoke of, he could be anywhere in and around those communities. However, he's also can be outside of the state at this point. We're coming up on 24 hours since this tragedy took place. So I think as this investigation continues to unfold, and hopefully during the next presser, they can give us more information, give the community, that community in particular, more information, of course, as long as it does not, here again, get in the way of their investigation, because at some point, people are going to begin to become impatient if he's not apprehended here soon, because people are afraid, they're angry, they're frightened, they're sad. They have a number of emotions that are going on, and hopefully the subject can be brought into custody here very soon.
And Chief, let's talk about the shelter-in-place orders. Why are people being asked to stay inside? What is the value of locking people down as much as authorities have asked them to be? And why our thoughts here turn to people who perhaps are living unhoused, perhaps do not have shelter. I'm curious what they are supposed to do. Why the lockdown? Why is it happening?
Well, of course, I mean, in this particular case, and this is a very tragic case, had a lone gunman, as far as we know, who was operating, went to 2 different locations, killed 22 people, injured 13 others that we know of at this very moment. So when you have a community of that size, a small bedroom community, if you will, of that size, people there know each other. People either in close proximity to each other in terms of 1 or 2 degrees of separation. There's a large number of people, I'm quite sure, related to each other who've been in that community historically for a long period of time. So asking people to hunker down in place while we have someone we know is a violent killer is the proper thing to do to help keep people safe. Now, if people truly need to get out, I don't think they're going to be harassed or anything like that by the police. But this is a time where the police is asking the community, stay inside, if you will. The less people we have out here, it makes it easier for all these police resources and personnel to move throughout the area, get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. Yeah. And I understand how that may be frustrating or become frustrating to people. But this is a real urgent situation here, and everyone needs to contribute as best they can in this.
And Chief, in the last moments we have with you here, looking at the suspect's past, he's a veteran, of course, and also someone with reported mental health crises. How do those things affect how law enforcement will conduct this search? Are they likely to arrest him, or, just to be frank, are they likely to kill him?
Well, that's going to be left up to him in terms of how he chooses to surrender himself. Hopefully, he surrenders himself peacefully, where no further risk of anyone getting injured is there. But however, if he chooses to go out in a violent manner, then those officers in that area, in that state, in that region, are going to do exactly what they have been trained to do, and that's to respond accordingly. But hopefully that does not happen. And if contact is made with him, hopefully here again, he will surrender himself. So no further risk of injury to anyone would happen. But that's going to be his call.
Cedric Alexander, the former police chief of DeKalb, Illinois, thank you so much. We're going to turn now to our coverage of the Israel-Gaza border, and I want to bring in here NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber, who is on that border now. We're going to talk a little bit about the Israel-Hamas war. Just to describe it to you a little bit, the situation, Israel says it conducted a rare targeted raid into Gaza using tanks last night, meaning this is at least the second time Israeli forces entered the territory since the war started. Calling today's incursion preparations for the, quote, next stages of combat. Also today, some European leaders called for a break in the fighting. They made this statement as Israel continues to bomb the Gaza territory. Health officials there say people are desperately searching for bodies under rubble. A director of a local hospital says an airstrike in the neighborhood Khan Yunis killed at least 80 people overnight, most of them women and children. The Israeli military says it struck a Hamas rocket launch post in that area. The Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry says at this point the number of Palestinians killed is more than 7,000. The United Nations and the World Health Organization continue to warn about the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Now, a dozen more aid trucks did go into Gaza today with food, water, and medical supplies on board, but still no fuel. So let's bring in NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber from the Israel-Gaza border. Ellison, thank you for being with us. What is this targeted raid that Israel carried out? What do you sense was the purpose?
Yeah, so they're calling it a targeted raid. But look, Jake, as you said, this is the second time, only the second time we have seen Israeli forces actually cross into Gaza. And this, by everything we have seen, appears to be the most significant ground incursion we have seen into Gaza so far. The other raid was much more limited than this. According to the IDF, their forces, when they went in, they were on the ground there for several hours and then left. They say that this was in part in preparation for the next phases of war. They did release some video where you see a number of tanks going past the border, the security wall that Israel has put up around Gaza, into Gaza, as well as heavy moving equipment, kind of like bulldozer type things, but armored, going in to Gaza. They say that they struck command centers, infrastructure, also gathered some intel. They also say during this raid, a number of Hamas operatives were killed. They have also talked about in the last 24 hours a number of high commanders within Hamas being killed in this raid, as well as airstrikes that they have carried out. We heard around the time this was taking place last night a large amount of booms coming from Gaza. And in retrospect, it seems like that was probably from that raid that they carried out inside of Gaza. Everything we have seen to date, and this includes the latest raid, are steps based on what Israeli military has said, based on images we have seen, are steps they are taking to sort of level the battleground so that their forces can go in for a ground incursion. That's part of why they say they have been carrying out such extensive airstrikes, is to prepare it so that when their soldiers do go into an urban setting, it is possibly easier for them because there aren't as many structures, buildings, places for Hamas to be hiding as they send their own forces into that area. Jake?
Now, Allison, I want to ask you what is, I think, a somewhat delicate question. 6 Gaza hospitals have already shut down in the midst of this bombing campaign, and you reported about the situation at one of them earlier this week. But here in the U.S., the Biden administration is now disputing the death toll coming out of Gaza. Take a listen to what John Kirby said today in this exchange with our colleague, Peter Alexander.
Can't take anything coming out of Hamas, including the so-called Ministry of Health, at face value.
You don't dispute that thousands of Palestinians, many of them innocent civilians, have been killed by Israeli strikes so far, do you?
Of course not. We absolutely know that the death toll continues to rise in Gaza. Of course we know that. But what we're saying is that we shouldn't rely on numbers put forth by Hamas and the Ministry of Health.
So they say it's
Now, Ellison, you have been there since the war began. Does this disagreement over numbers square with what you have witnessed on the ground?
I mean, I think a lot of the images, the videos, the conversations we have had with doctors, it doesn't really seem to jive with what the administration is saying right now, right? Look, the numbers that we have in terms of the death toll of Israelis, those numbers that we get, that's from the IDF, that's from the Israeli government. The numbers that we're getting from inside of Gaza that John Kirby and others are pushing back on, but not that much, just saying they don't think it is that high. But I mean, when we're talking about civilians, if it's 5,000, 6 or 7, it's still civilians, right? So the numbers that we are getting primarily from inside of Gaza, it is coming from Gaza's Ministry of Health, which is a Hamas-run agency. But there are also numbers and figures that have also come out from within Gaza that are from outside groups, NGOs, things like the UN. UNICEF has said that they, by their numbers, that at least 2,300 children have died in the last 3 weeks. So we know that the civilian toll inside of Gaza is incredibly high. It's difficult to report from inside of there right now because it's very difficult to get in. None of the border crossings are open. I mean, we just got them open to aid, right? For outside international journalists to get in at this point is very difficult. But the numbers that we have from both sides here, they're coming from political groups and or the military, or in Gaza's case, from a health agency that is run by Hamas. But we're also getting numbers from Israeli forces that comes from the Israeli prime minister, that comes from IDF as well. We have seen absolute carnage inside of Gaza. We hear the airstrikes every night that we are out here, and every time you hear an explosion, because of how densely populated Gaza is, you know there are civilians there. And one of the UN representatives was talking about this idea of the IDF continuing to tell people in northern Gaza to evacuate, telling them it is not safe. They say in some recent phone calls that have been released by the IDF, telling people, look what happened in Khan Yunis. We think you should get out to a safer area. But the question one of the UN representatives posed was, they said, what good is telling people to evacuate if there is nowhere else for them to go, if they have seen convoys and other humanitarian ventures out of northern Gaza heading to the south, struck by bombs on the main roadway? If everywhere in Gaza is scarce on basic necessities for survival, and people aren't sure they'll ever be able to come back home if they leave, people are faced with an impossible choice. We are talking about an area that is the size of Philadelphia, with over 2 million people living inside of it. We have seen so many airstrikes in the area that the numbers coming from Gaza's Ministry of Health, whether you are skeptical because they come from Hamas or not, I think there's been very clear evidence from video footage from our teams who are inside Gaza, as well as outside agencies, to support the fact that a massive amount of civilians have died inside of Gaza, thousands of them. And again, UNICEF says at least 2,300 children, just children, inside of Gaza have died since this started. Jake.
A terrible loss of life in Israel, and now on the other side of the border where you are standing. Ellison Barber, thank you so much for being with us. Qatar's top negotiator says he believes all civilian hostages in Gaza could be released in the coming days. Speaking exclusively to Sky News, Qatar's Minister of State says a pause in the fighting is necessary to open a safe passage for the hostages to be released. But he also says he's confident progress is being made. Here is part of that Sky News interview.
With this violence increases every day, with the bombing continuous every day, our task has become even more difficult.
Is it fair to say at the moment that no more releases are imminent in the coming hours or possibly even days?
Our target is to release all of the civilian hostages. That's what we're working on, and that's what we want to achieve. It is not an easy process. It's a very complicated process.
Are we expecting big news soon, do you think?
We hope so. We hope so. We're working towards that.
Meanwhile, for the first time, the Israeli military is identifying the families of people who've been kidnapped. NBC's Matt Bradley has more from Tyre, Lebanon.
Yeah, well, just today, the Israeli Defense Forces announced that they had identified the families of those 224 captives who Hamas took from southern Israel during their terrorist operation that shocked the world on October 7th. Now, so far, 4 of those have been returned. And actually, those 4 were not included in that 224 number. All of them were sent over the Rafah border crossing and into Egypt. And in fact, we heard from one of them recently describing her ordeal and describing where a lot of these hostages are. They're in a huge warren of tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. And this has made things very difficult as Israel continues to bombard the Gaza Strip with thousands of bombs, they have just said. And meanwhile, they're mustering their forces, planning an enormous ground invasion into the Gaza Strip. This is a much anticipated attack that the Israelis have projected will completely dismantle Hamas. So all of this is complicated while at the same time there are negotiations that are going on with Hamas, mostly through the Qataris. And we just heard our partners at Sky News interviewed one of the lead negotiators who said that Hamas would be willing to free all of these civilian captives if Israel were to pause their fighting, pause their bombardments, and I suppose pause their planned invasion of the Gaza Strip. Now, that is something that doesn't seem to be necessarily something that we've heard the Israelis taking on to. This is an operation that the Israeli public, the Israeli military has been preparing for weeks, and they seem to be very interested in executing it and finally putting an end to their antagonists in the Gaza Strip, Hamas. But that could imperil, again, these hundreds of Israelis who are being held under this barricaded enclave.
Matt Bradley, thank you so much. Coming up, at least 27 people are dead and several others missing after Hurricane Otis tore through Acapulco, Mexico as a surprise Category 5 storm. We'll bring you images from the aftermath after the break. Welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we are watching tonight. A suspect in the murder of a Maryland judge has been found dead, ending a week-long manhunt. Police say they believe Pedro Argote was upset about losing custody of his kids when he allegedly shot and killed Judge Andrew Wilkinson outside his house last week. It's not yet known how Argote died. The U.S. grew at its fastest pace in nearly 2 years in the third quarter of this year. More specifically, GDP grew by almost 5%, driven by consumer spending. And all of this comes in spite of higher interest rates and inflation. Today, Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman of New York pleaded guilty to one count of falsely pulling a fire alarm. You see an incident of it there. The incident, which Bowman called pretty embarrassing, happened last month during a House vote. Bowman will have to pay a $1,000 fine and write an apology to Capitol Police. In return, prosecutors have agreed to dismiss the charge against him in 3 months. In Texas, a bill that will allow local police to arrest and jail migrants passed the state's House of Representatives today. Governor Greg Abbott called for the legislation. The measure now returns to the Senate, and then, if it's approved, it goes back to Abbott's desk for his signature. And just when you thought the Beatles were done giving us new music, the group's final song will be released next week with some help from artificial intelligence. Now and Then, that's the name of it, is expected to be their final song as a group. Using AI, director Peter Jackson was able to separate John Lennon's vocals from his 1970s demo, allowing Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr to finish the song along with a guitar track from George Harrison, and that track was recorded 30 years ago. The deadly mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine raises questions about some of the more disturbing mass shootings in recent U.S. history, and it begs the question, what does all of this violence say about life here in America? NBC News' Josh Menkowitz has more.
All Maine people are sharing in the sorrow of the families who lost loved ones last night.
This morning, Maine Governor Janet Mills spoke to the people of her state about the shooting in Lewiston.
This city did not deserve this terrible assault on its citizens.
It shouldn't have happened. We've said that before. And then last night, it did happen. We've said that before, too. The odds are, we'll say it again. Another crushing, heartbreaking act of gun violence. The nonprofit Gun Violence Archive, which defines a mass shooting as 4 or more people killed or wounded, says yesterday's tragedy was the 565th mass shooting this year alone in America. There's no way to predict where it will happen next, except that it will be in a place we go every day. Yesterday it was a bowling alley where children were competing in a youth league, and a restaurant where locals gathered for a meal, a drink, and to shoot some pool.
I just feel sad. I want to know who, where, when, why. Why would he do this?
Where else in the world do these kinds of shootings happen so often? You already know the answer. It's nowhere. And we've said that before, too. Where can we feel safe? When can we feel safe? What kind of nation are we? Feels like we've been asking those questions forever.
There's just been a gunshot on the main target.
Through the years, schools have been frequent targets. This year marked the 57th anniversary of a shooting at the University of Texas that claimed 16 lives. The images from Columbine High School in Colorado are still haunting, more than 2 decades later. At Sandy Hook Elementary School, the victims were first graders, 20 of them, along with 6 adults. The gunman was only 20 years old, not much more than a child himself. And just last year in Uvalde, Texas, 19 children were killed at Robb Elementary School.
Run! Keep your head down!
The deadliest shooting ever on American soil was at a country music festival in Las Vegas in 2017. 58 concertgoers lost their lives. And the list goes on and on at military bases, movie theaters, and places of worship, like the Emmanuel AME Church in South Carolina.
We're tired. We're fed up with this. We've had enough.
We say we've had enough, but clearly we have not. The news is always shocking, but these days, who can say it's surprising? Here's how the BBC reported a shooting in San Bernardino, California in 2015.
Just another day in the United States of America. Another day of gunfire, panic, and fear.
Is there a profile of shooters that can help us understand them? Some are filled with hate, like the shooters who targeted a black neighborhood in Buffalo, a gay nightclub in Orlando, and the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. There is still much to learn about yesterday's suspect, Robert Card. Law enforcement officials said he recently reported mental health issues that included hearing voices. Today, Governor Mills shared in the mourning of last night's victims.
I know that the people of Lewiston are enduring immeasurable pain, but I promise you this, we will all help you carry that grief.
The owner of the restaurant in Lewiston that was targeted posted this on Facebook. My heart is crushed. We lost great people in this community. How can we make any sense of this?
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Congress is returning to work with a new speaker. The Middle East and Ukraine will be global priorities. So when will we look inward? When will we take a hard look at ourselves? What will we do to stop the next shooter? How many Americans will die before that happens? When is enough really enough? How many times will we ask the same questions?
Tonight, we're getting a better sense of just how much destruction Hurricane Otis caused in Mexico. The record Category 5 storm, now estimated to be the strongest storm ever to hit Mexico's Pacific coast, left at least 27 people dead and 4 missing in the popular beach town of Acapulco. Whole neighborhoods are covered with mud and debris, making it hard for residents there to get around. This woman saying her house was completely lost to the historic storm. The situation there is so desperate right now, people are taking food and supplies however they can from supermarkets. And the scope of the destruction is startling. This building you see there is left standing, but as you can see, more or less anything that wasn't structural was more or less ripped from each floor. And this stadium completely flooded. The scenes show a long path to recovery for Acapulco. NBC News correspondent Gadi Venegas joins me now. Gadi, recovery has been a slow process due to all this damage, and for a time that city was unreachable by phone. What is the latest on efforts to get communication back up and more aid to this area?
Jacob, it took almost a day to get a lot of these images and a report from authorities. First off, the main highway that connects the city of Acapulco with the rest of the country was blocked off with landslides and other damage to the road. The president said the military had to come in and work to clear at least 2 lanes, 1 lane going into Acapulco and another lane going from Acapulco towards Mexico City. Now, this is essential because that is the highway that the military is using to bring in a lot of the aid. Now, we've seen these videos of the damaged structures. A lot of these large buildings are 4- or 5-star hotels near the ocean. This is a luxurious area, a very wealthy part of Acapulco, where these buildings were almost destroyed. We can see the structure standing, but as you mentioned, the windows are gone, the doors are gone, and there's debris everywhere. Large parts of the city are also still underwater. You can imagine the damage that was caused in the outer parts of the city, in small buildings, in the more poor areas. Imagine people that lived in homes that were made of wood and metal sheets. And these are the areas where authorities are trying to bring in the help. Now, you also shared some images of people that have gone into the stores to take whatever food they can, perishable items. The president has asked people in Acapulco not to loot the stores. However, people have been doing it. But we've also seen people that are taking advantage of the situation, taking household appliances or flat screen TVs and items like these. But the government is trying to restore order as they work on restoring communication. Jake, right now the priority is to restore power. But the president, who was in the area yesterday, said this morning that it appeared that nearly every utility pole in the Acapulco area had been knocked over by the storm. So they're working as fast as they can to get the power restored, which is also necessary to get running water because the water plant requires energy to function. And then after that, of course, they got to get those antennas back up to get cell phone service and internet service to a large part of Acapulco. I should also say, Jake, that the airport, the international airport there, has had also some damage. The terminal is damaged and the control tower. So the airport is shut down. So there's a lot of work to be done as the damage is already is being assessed. That is also the last report indicates that 27 people died in the destruction and 4 were missing. Those 4 were members of the military, first responders. One of them is believed to now be among the dead. But we're still waiting for more updates on what has happened on the ground there, Jake.
Gadi Venegas with a beautiful city reduced to survival conditions. Gadi, thank you so much. Brian Kohberger was back in court today as his lawyers were trying to get his case dismissed. His defense team was trying to get the case thrown out on the grounds of, quote, an error in grand jury instructions, which the judge denied. But there was also a separate motion in private to talk about the defense's claims that the grand jury was biased. The outcome of that motion is under seal and not available to the public. Just to remind you, Kohberger is accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in a home invasion a few days before Thanksgiving last year. NBC's Dana Griffin joins me now with more on this case. Dana, what happened today? Is this a routine defense tactic or is this something larger?
Yeah, a lot of people are calling it a Hail Mary, Jake. Legal experts say that this attempt by the defense to get the grand jury indictment thrown out is fairly routine and, as proven this afternoon, is rarely achieved by a defense team. During the 40-minute hearing, the defense argued that the jury was misled during jury instructions earlier this year on the standard of proof required for an indictment. Now, the defense says that the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt, and had more evidence been provided when asked by several several jurors, they might have reached a different conclusion. Well, the state argued that probable cause is the correct standard of proof for a grand jury. The judge ultimately denied the motion, saying that the argument is something the Idaho Supreme Court needs to weigh in on. Keep in mind, prosecutors in the University of Idaho murders case have laid out sufficient evidence for this case to go to trial, including finding Kohlberger's DNA on a knife sheath found next to one of the victims, Jake, inside that murder home.
And Dana, what will you be watching for next in the case? What's coming up?
Well, first, will the defense attorneys ask the Supreme Court to weigh in, the state Supreme Court, on these jury instruction issues? If so, this could delay the trial further. Now, initially, the trial was set to start this month, but Kohlberger later waived his right to a speedy trial, so it may not start until 2024. Kohlberger, again, is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary for that November 2022 stabbing deaths of Kaylee Gonzalez, Maddie Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. The state is seeking the death penalty. And one other thing I want to note, Jake, is that we did get some clarity on a separate issue regarding cameras in court. NBC News is part of a coalition of media outlets seeking camera access in the courtroom on First Amendment grounds. And the judge today said that he will not ban cameras, but says that he needs to take more control over those cameras and what they record, because there have been recordings of proceedings outside of the approved pull camera. So we'll be watching to see once he makes that decision official. Jake?
Obviously a very sensitive issue. Dana Griffin, thank you so much. Former FTX head Sam Bankman-Fried took the stand today in his own defense, but it was a bit of a dress rehearsal because he did not testify before the jury. The purpose here, seemingly, was to give the judge a preview of his testimony to help decide what will be allowed during the real thing tomorrow. CNBC's Kate Rooney has the latest.
Sam Bankman-Fried is starting to tell his side of the story. He took the stand today without a jury present. This was to decide if certain topics are admissible, including the roles of his FTX lawyers. The defense team kicked things off today, questioning Sam Bankman-Fried, the indicted crypto founder. He seemed calm. He seemed collected. He answered concisely when the legal team and his own legal team was questioning him. They tried to place some of the blame on his FTX lawyers at the time, especially someone called Dan Friedberg, saying that he signed off on bank accounts that misused customer money. And Bankman-Fried said that he thought all of this was allowed in the terms of service. That was written by the lawyers. For that portion, he sounded calm. He was giving short, clear answers, had much shorter hair, looking much more clean-cut on the stand today. Not the case, though, in terms of that calm demeanor when the prosecution started questioning him. He stumbled over cross-examination. He stalled. He was starting to take sips of water to wait and try to collect himself. He was asking for clarification as well. Said that he couldn't remember. Instead of saying things like just no, he would respond with sentences like, I would not classify that as particularly what happened. The judge repeatedly told him to listen to the questions and answer directly. He seemed frustrated with some of the diversions. He also noted sarcastically that the defendant has an interesting way of answering questions. SBF, as he's also known, testifying at all is really a risky strategy. He will face more cross-examination by the government under oath tomorrow. And if he's found guilty, the judge suspects that Bankman-Fried lied at any point in his sworn testimony. It could add years to that sentence. There's already been some tension between Bankman-Fried and the judge. For example, over the summer, he revoked Sam Bankman-Fried's bail, accusing him of witness tampering. The upside, though, that Bankman-Fried is betting on, potentially persuading at least one juror that he did not have criminal intent. That's key. All he needs is one juror for a hung jury. That could result in a retrial. Kate Rooney for CNBC Business News in Lower Manhattan.
Coming up, California Governor Gavin Newsom had a surprise sit-down with President Xi Jinping in China, but the move is causing a bit of stir amongst politicians here at home. All that and more after the break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world in 80 seconds. An American has been charged with murder in Germany. Over the summer, he allegedly attacked 2 women, also American, pushing them down a steep slope. One of those women died. The 31-year-old suspect faces life in prison. Today, California Governor Gavin Newsom met with Chinese President Xi Jinping while on a climate trip in Beijing. The governor said he believes the U.S. and China must collaborate to fight climate change. Now, China is the 2nd largest economy in the world, but if California were its own nation, it would be at least the world's 5th largest economy, maybe even the 4th. Still, the trip drew serious bipartisan criticism from U.S. lawmakers. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, a severe drought is causing rivers in Brazil to fall to their lowest level in over a century. Over 100 endangered dolphins have washed ashore, killed by high water temperatures. The people living in the Amazon are suffering too. In a region where boats are often the only mode of transportation, they've been left high and dry, making it difficult for food, water, and other supplies to reach isolated villages. And finally, China has sent its youngest ever crew of Chinese astronauts into space. The latest generation of so-called taikonauts, which derives from the Chinese word for space, left today for China's space station for an expected 6-month stay. Now, before we go tonight, it's time for the future of everything. How some new AI tech might help identify healthcare workers who are dealing with stress and anxiety. That is coming up right after this break. Stay tuned. Tonight, in the future of everything, new research that uses artificial intelligence to spot signs of anxiety and depression in healthcare workers. It is a new way to use the technology to help both healthcare providers and their patients. Rana Novini from NBC New York has more.
Dr. Yomaris Pena was on the front lines of the pandemic. As the chief medical officer of Somos Community Care, she worked with underserved communities. She helped set up testing sites and eventually vaccination clinics. Now, looking back, she admits it wasn't easy.
When you don't know when something is going to happen, that creates a lot of anxiety. And we were just going through the motions of things. So many people got sick and so many people died. And after that, just the trauma of reliving and being alive, right, for so many people.
Researchers at NYU Langone Health are backing up what many assumed. At the height of the pandemic, healthcare workers were more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety and depression. The study looked at 820 medical workers around the country, analyzing their conversations with therapists in the spring of 2020. All of it done using artificial intelligence.
We think of AI, we think of Skynet, we think of something that somehow was going to take our job and be an alien in the way that it thinks. And I don't think that this is a constructive approach.
Behind the study is Dr. Matteo Malgaroli. He's an assistant professor of psychiatry at NYU. He says they used AI to dissect the language of therapy patients, a first step into studying how AI can help in the field of mental health.
I would say right now, but this is something that needs to be studied.
As for the future, he doesn't envision replacing humans with robot therapists. Instead, a tool for real therapists to screen for depression and anxiety or to handle note-taking and paperwork.
I think, though, that actually where they're going to make the most revolution is in the boring things.
For Dr. Pena, she's hopeful more focus will be placed on the mental health of frontline workers, whether it's through AI or not.
It's a needed conversation. Who takes care of the healthcare provider? Who takes care of the person that takes care of you?
Our thanks to Rana Novini of NBC New York for that report. Now, for this week's edition of The Best of Us, stories about incredible people doing incredible things. Tonight, we want to introduce you to Luis von Ahn. He's the man behind Duolingo and has changed both the technological and language learning landscapes all before he turned 40. And thanks to his contributions, he's being inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame tonight. NBC's Emily Akeda sat down with Luis to learn more about the inspiration behind his creations.
Leaning into all of the latest trends, chances are this oversized bright green owl has flown across your social media pages. It's the mascot for Duolingo, the largest online language learning platform in the world, co-founded by...
My name is Luis von Ahn.
It's a journey that began far from any tech hub in Guatemala, amid the country's long civil war in the 1980s. But von Ahn's mother's approach was plain and simple. Give her son something to occupy his time.
I begged her for a Nintendo because all my friends had a Nintendo, and she refused, and instead she came home one day with a computer. And I was very upset. Back then, this is in the late 80s, computers were much harder to use. I mean, it didn't even have a mouse. It's just a keyboard.
There's nothing mobile about them.
No, there was nothing. It was a humongous keyboard that you plugged into the TV.
That clunky, unwanted computer would unlock von Ahn's gift for problem solving.
It came with a user manual. and I had to figure out how to use it, and I was 8 years old. So I kind of spent a lot of afternoons trying to figure out how to use it, and over time, I just got good at it.
Good enough to eventually wind up at Duke University, and after that at Carnegie Mellon University to get his doctorate, where he would help create a way for websites to tell the difference between humans and bots.
How many of you have had to fill out some sort of web form where you've been asked to read a distorted sequence of characters like this? Yeah. How many of you found it really, really annoying? Okay, outstanding. So I invented that.
That invention would come to be known as CAPTCHA.
It stands for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to Tell Computers and Humans Apart. It's a mouthful.
I see why it's an acronym.
But Van On wanted something else, something that went beyond fighting spam. So he invented reCAPTCHA, which helps digitize books every time you type a word in CAPTCHA's web form. That's when one of the big tech giants came calling.
So you sold that technology to Google, and then you transitioned into language.
Yes.
How did that come to be?
It was 2009. Google bought reCAPTCHA to help digitize books. And what that meant is that I really didn't have to work anymore. And I just wanted to do a project that was related to my passion, which has always been education.
2 years later, Van On, along with his PhD student at the time, Severin Hacker, would launch Duolingo.
Each exercise is about 15 to 20 seconds, and a lesson is about 2 minutes.
Offering 100 courses across more than 40 languages, and it's all free. Even Van On has used the language app to learn French, Portuguese, and Japanese.
So I formulated this next question with the help of Duolingo.
Okay.
Que te motiva? What motivates you?
Oh, wow. Positive impact to the world, and large-scale positive impact, I think. The more I hear, large numbers of users actually learning something on Duolingo, that's very motivating. I grew up in Guatemala.
Yeah.
It is a poor country. In poor countries, they barely learn how to read and write, and therefore can never make a lot of money. So I wanted to do something that would give equal access to education to everyone.
And he has, with more than 74 million monthly active users this year, with a reach that stretches around the world.
It's very rare that you see the same thing being used by billionaires and by refugees. I mean, usually billionaires have better stuff, but in here, it's kind of more money could not buy you a better education. So I was very proud of that.
Our thanks to Emily Ikeda for that report. And while she was at Duolingo's headquarters, the company brought out the real brains of the operation. Have a look.
I got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes. I only got one thing on my mind.
Thank you so much, Emily Ikeda. Now, we want to leave you tonight with the situation out of Maine. We're going to continue to monitor that situation and the manhunt for suspect Robert Card. Last we heard, police were outside of a home connected to Card, but no word if anyone is even in that house yet. Police have been in the area for the last few hours. We'll continue to monitor that developing story. Please stay with NBC News Now and NBCNews.com for more. But for now, that does it for us tonight. I'm Jake Ward. We will see you tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for being here, and stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.